My name is Juliana Nykolaiszyn with the Oklahoma State University Library. Today is Wednesday, July 18th, 2007, and I'm in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, interviewing Dr. K. Martin. This interview is being conducted as part of the inductees of the Oklahoma Women's Hall of Fame Oral History Project. Dr. Martin was inducted into the Oklahoma Women's Hall of Fame in 2007. She has played a pioneering role in the field of technology education since her appointment as CEO and Superintendent of Francis Tuttle Technology Center in 1997. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Martin.
Thank you, Juliana.
Let's begin by learning a little more about you. Could you start with where you grew up and give us a little background on your early life?
Thank you. I was born in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, and I lived there until I was 4. Are we on?
False start, how about that?
Okay, well, we got another start.
Woo.
You did so good on that first part. You said it all. I don't need to do anything else.
What a day. Yeah. My name is Juliana Nykolaiszyn with the Oklahoma State University Library. Today is Wednesday, July 18th, 2007, and I'm in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, interviewing Dr. K. Martin. This interview is being conducted as part of the inductees of the Oklahoma Women's Hall of Fame Oral History Project. Dr. Martin was inducted into the Oklahoma Women's Hall of Fame in 2007. She has played a pioneering role in the field of technology education since her appointment as CEO and Superintendent of Francis Tuttle Technology Center in 1997. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Martin.
Thank you, Juliana.
Let's begin by learning a little more about you. Could you start with where you grew up and give us a little insight into your early life?
Okay. I was born in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, moved from Bartlesville to El Dorado, Kansas when I was 4. My father worked in engineering as far as the petroleum industry. So we moved to El Dorado, Kansas. It's a small town about 30 miles from Wichita. I grew up with a very probably nondescript lifestyle. My mother was a homemaker. My father traveled somewhat, but was always busy with work. I have one brother, a year younger than myself, and my mother was always there when I got home from school every day with the cookies and milk type thing, which is so different than what so many young people grow up with today. My father was very, very supportive. We did lots and lots of family activities, so it was really pretty nondescript, just a very wonderful childhood.
Okay. Could you describe for us the types of schools you attended growing up?
I attended public schools. I attended 3 different kindergartens because we moved 3 different times. I started kindergarten when I was 4, so I was really, I guess, quite young to begin going to school a half day, and then went to the traditional junior high school, traditional high school, and graduated from the public high school in El Dorado, Kansas, in the time frame in which students graduate. So,
okay. What were some of your favorite subjects in school at that time?
My favorite subjects, I think science was one of my very, very favorite subjects when I was younger, and then as I got into high school and I started taking some business courses, I just thought business was just so fascinating, and just took every business course they offered. So that was really, I guess, the most interesting. I liked English because I loved to read, but started off really had a real passion for science, but decided business was even more exciting.
Now, outside of school, what were the types of activities you'd like to do for fun?
Okay, as I was growing up,
sure.
One of the things I loved to do was swim, and we would go to the public swimming pool, and I just thought that was great fun. As I got a little bit older, my dad bought a boat, and so we would go to the lake just on a very regular basis in the summer. We did a lot of camping. My dad was, he never told me there was a difference between boys and girls, and because he taught my brother to fish and hunt, he did that with me also. So we did a lot of that, a lot of picnicking, And then in my free time, I like to read and, of course, hang out with my friends. That was kind of fun too. But the days before malls, so we didn't do that.
Now, when you were younger, you liked business and you liked science. What did you think you would be when you grew up?
Well, I guess because of the time frame when I grew up, it was, first of all, career-wise, you were either a nurse or a teacher, and or perhaps a secretary. Those were the three options, really, when I grew up, if you were going to go into a career. I think because my mother had been a housewife, early on, my plans, I think, were just to fall in love, get married, and have 2 children, and stay home and take care of the house. So that was, I guess, an earlier mental image of what I thought I would do in my future plans.
And also, when you were growing up, can you tell me who some of your role models were?
Well, my dad was certainly a large role model. Again, as I mentioned, he never discriminated against boys do this, girls do that. And he was a very hard worker. He was very dedicated, a loving family man. So he definitely was a role model. My mother was a role model in that she knew how to take care of a house and keep a family happy in that respect. In school, I always had many role models. It seemed that I was a good student and teachers liked me. And they would kind of take me under their wing. And I remember in 3rd grade, one of my teachers took me to an opera, and it might have been a little young for me to do that because it wasn't something I appreciated so much at that age. But they were always role models. In high school, I hadn't planned to go to college, and 2 of the business teachers took me under their wing and took me to their college and showed me the ropes and gave me some opportunities there. So I think those are the ones that I remember the most, but certainly there were a lot of others.
When you started to visit these colleges with your instructors, did it click that I could possibly go in another direction in my life?
It really did. I had not planned to go to college, and that I didn't think my parents could afford it. At the time, I didn't know about scholarships. I didn't know any of that was available, and I didn't want to put a financial burden on my parents. So when I had the skills, because I'd taken all these business courses, and I thought I will be able to be a secretary and I'll be able to support myself. And then I remember during my senior year, my dad sat down and said, have you ever thought about going to business school or business college? And I said, well, I really haven't. And he said, that might be something you want to think about. So I kind of had planned that. And then when I visited the colleges with my teachers, I realized I could take business courses there, and so that was kind of what I planned to do, that I would go and maybe get an associate degree because I never wanted to teach, but get a business degree, and then I would be, I guess, more value added in the workplace.
Tell me a little bit about your family, in terms of your family now. Tell me a little bit about the impact they have on your life and how important they are in your life.
Well, the family that I grew up with, my mother, my brother, and my father, and then extended family with grandparents, they were always extremely loving, supportive. I can never remember my parents having an argument, so it was a very loving, wonderful family life. And my dad's still living today, and so we still continue that. It's something that you realize, I think, as you get older, how very precious that family is, and the family today is even more important to me than ever. I have one child, an extended family with my husband's 2 children and grandchildren, and I realize just how important that is. So it's something I think we value more and more every day, and particularly as we get older.
Now, if you could, let's fast forward a little bit. I know we focused a little bit on your early life. Tell me a little bit about your experiences in college.
Okay. As I started my freshman year, again, I didn't have a lot of information about what to expect because no one in my immediate family had gone to college. My father had early on, but because of the war, he wasn't able to complete college. So I guess I didn't know what to expect. I was, again, a pretty good student. I pledged a sorority, actually became president of the sorority into my sophomore year and my junior year. And I decided that, again, I was concerned about the financial part with my parents paying for my way to school. I worked part-time in the maintenance department on campus in the office to pay for my sorority activities and my clothing. But I worried about my parents just sacrificing and also knowing I had a brother a year younger to go through school. So I decided I wanted to finish school as quickly as I could because it would just be less expensive. So I asked my advisor if I could finish, because I looked at my schedule, if I could finish in 3.5 years versus 4 years. And she told me no, that wasn't possible. So I decided I would do my own advising, and I did my own advising and had another person who I asked them if they would sign my form, and they were too busy, so they did, and I did finish in 3.5 years. So that was, I guess it saved a semester of college. So.
And you went to school at?
I went to school at Emporia State University for my undergraduate.
Okay. And what was your major?
My major was business education, and I had started as a 2-year associate degree because I was just going to get the 2 years, and then I had a sorority sister who said, if you go ahead and get your teaching credentials, you could teach. And that would be the last thing I wanted to do. I did not want to teach, but she kind of said, well, just go ahead and do it. You could always fall back on that and have a career if you needed it. And so I did, and when I did my student teaching, I fell in love with teaching and found my passion.
Well, that plays right into my next question. Okay. I was going to ask you how you ended up working in education. And did you always want to be a teacher or more of an administrator?
I wanted to be a secretary because that was my vision. And again, I did not think I wanted to be a teacher. And at the time, women weren't administrators. I knew of no female administrators, and that was not a goal that I had in mind.
How did you end up in graduate school? How did that path come about?
When I first started teaching, and obviously I started the semester because of finishing in January, I taught for 1 semester, and then the school where I had done my student teaching asked me they offered me a job, and so I moved there, and they told me I was the only person they had hired who did not have a master's degree. And at the time, I thought, I just finished my baccalaureate degree, why would I want a master's degree? So they really felt like that was extremely important, so I wasn't able to start at that time, but that was the thing that started me later, that I felt like if I was going to stay in teaching, I really did need to get a master's degree in that area. So it was an opportunity later on for me to do that.
Can you describe some of the most important places where you learned the background you needed for your career today?
Well, obviously, in the classroom, I learned, I got a huge background from that, but I think the most important was from mentors, from other people who would tell me how important a certain degree was, or a certain class, or a certain activity. So I think most of that was learned just from other people, not necessarily from, although the classroom certainly gave me that basic background.
You got that practical knowledge, that
Absolutely.
hands-on
Absolutely.
knowledge elsewhere.
Absolutely.
If you could just tell me a little bit about the Francis Tuttle Technology Center. Tell me a little bit about your students, the area that you cover here, and some of the programs that you offer.
You want me to talk about my favorite subject? We have been in operation for our daytime classes for 25 years. So during that time, we've grown tremendously to approximately 3,000 students in the daytime. We also serve our adults in the daytime and evening, our short-term people who come in and want to take just a short-term class, and then we do economic development for business and industry. So during a year's time, we'll serve over 40,000 people. So that part has really grown. We have a diverse program of offerings, everything from a dropout program where it's high school students who have dropped out of college and they really don't have any place to go. So they come to us, they take their academics, and they also take their a career tech program. So that's one end. And then we have at the other end students, for example, in pre-engineering who are high school students who are going on into collegiate level programs in engineering. Next year, or this coming year, actually next month, we're going to be opening a bioscience and medicine academy for the same purpose. These students will be going into collegiate level programs when they finish. At the same time, we have adults who are returning to school. Many of those are in the same classes as the high school students. Some of them are, they want to upgrade or retrain. Some of them have lost their job and they need to come up with another skill. So we have what we call our career programs, which are those primarily day programs, although some of them also are available in the evening. And then we serve our business and industry clients. We have about 500 core businesses. And we do everything from safety training to individualized training to help them with their workforce so that we can really make our economy stronger. So that's kind of just a real little nutshell. I can certainly elaborate on that however you'd wish, because there's a lot, we do a lot of things in that area.
When you were appointed CEO and superintendent of Francis Tuttle back in 1997, did you feel any added pressure since since only one other woman at that time had been named to such a post in Oklahoma?
I didn't feel the pressure as a female. Maybe, just pressure because you kind of realize the buck stops here and there's not anyone else that you can say, wait a minute, that maybe that's not my responsibility. I've been here 25 years. I had certainly started when the institution was small, and I all along pretty much prepared for that position. Was the second in command for about 13, 14 years. So it was really a smooth transition in that respect. And my supervisor, or my boss, who had really prepared me to take his position. So,
any stumbling blocks or adversity you faced along the way?
Certainly. There was when I was teaching, and I was teaching in an area of marketing and business, and it was again a male-dominated area, and I think there weren't role models in those days to say, here's how you handle yourself as being the only female and males. And I wasn't quite sure if, the group went to coffee or somebody asked me to go to coffee, am I supposed to go? Does that mean that's a date? I worked through it, just trying to be as professional as possible, but it was really awkward. When I decided that I wanted to be a college professor, and that was, to be a college professor, I needed the credentials to do that, and I really needed the doctorate. So I researched it, found out that I wanted, that the best place in the nation to do this at the time was Ohio State. I was living in Arkansas. I had a 3-year-old son and a former husband who told me that women don't do those things. So it was a real big dilemma to figure out, how am I going to get this degree if that's what I want to do for the rest of my life, and how do I handle all of this? So it was a huge decision to to go to Ohio State, and I had planned to take my son with me while I did that, and then get my degree and then come back. There was going to be one job in the state of Oklahoma that possibly would be available that I might be able to qualify for. So I went based on that job being open, and obviously it was, and I did get the job, but it was just after I got there. I mean, it was a male-dominated program, and I thought, what am I doing here as a woman who left her family because she wanted to get this degree, for the future. I did not know of any other women, and that was what my ex-husband told me. He said, "Name another woman who's done this." Well, I could not come up with one, so I thought this is really unusual. When I got the job as a college professor, I was the only female in the College of Business, and I was. It took me a while to figure it out, but I was sexually harassed for a period of time. And I kept thinking, something's wrong with me, I'm causing that. For a while I just didn't even know what was going on. I finally realized that that's what it was, so I went to the dean and talked to the dean about it, and he took care of it right away. But it was a little painful to go through that, and because I respected the person, and yet I thought it was me, and didn't realize that there was more there. So that was painful. So I think sometimes just not having that female role model to say, yeah, somebody has done this before, and somebody has left their family to go do this, and I'm not, I guess, abnormal, and to work through the sexual harassment. And then once I came here and was in the career tech field, my former supervisor and mentor, Bruce Gray, took me under his wing and took me to the superintendent's meeting. Again, there would not be women there, but he treated me so professionally. Everybody else treated me professionally, and it was very smooth, and so I did not feel tremendous pressure on that for being a woman necessarily. But
nowadays, the climate has changed.
It has changed. It has, and there are those women out there and those administrators, and it is different.
Now, I was doing some research, and I think something that you guys do here, and that's really important to you, is educating young girls and minorities about non-traditional career fields. Can you touch upon that for me, please? That's been one of my passions, because, again, when I grew up, you didn't go into non-traditional fields. You went into, or from my vantage point, because I didn't know anyone who had these other positions, but the teacher or the secretary or the nurse, those were the jobs for women. And so I have felt really, really passionate about giving women opportunities for other positions, because they can do any of those jobs. So some of our non-traditional programs for women would be, like for the engineering program, I'm very, very passionate about the number of women. They tell me there's about 25%, but I think there's less than that. Because, again, so many young women don't grow up with the female role model of an engineer. So we started a program called GirlTech, and each girl who is in one of these non-traditional areas is paired with a mentor who helps them through those just through some of those tough times, or gives them, somebody to talk to. So, for example, the girls in pre-engineering will be paired with a female engineer, and that gives them a huge opportunity to just, work through some of those challenges. Our automotive technician program, there's tremendous opportunities for women, because they just are they can be so skilled in those areas. But it's a tough thing. Our society still does not look favorably sometimes upon women being automotive technicians, or they, again, could be harassed. But I try to encourage any of those women in those areas, and because they're great paying jobs, it gets them out of sometimes this financial hole that they seem to get in, that if I can only do this because I'm a female, rather than look at the opportunities that you have. Can you give me It could be more than one. A key moment in your career that you consider one of your biggest highlights.
Probably would be, and there are many, but I think when I got my PhD after, thinking I might not have been normal when I left my family to go get that, I also did not have I really didn't have the background for that, and if I were advising somebody today, I probably would be a little more hesitant about telling them that that's something, at least to go that path that I did. I had high school algebra 1, and that was it. During the PhD program, because it was at Ohio State a very statistically based program, they would say, let's go through calculus, we're going to review our calculus, we're going to do this and that. I did not have that background, so I got books and just learned much of that on my own without the formal training. So I think just getting through that program, and I saw many people fall by the wayside when they went through the program, or they came out and they were the all but dissertation piece, the ABD part, they didn't go ahead and finish it. And so it was because it was a big sacrifice in my life with my family and with my child. I felt like that was a huge accomplishment for me at the time.
So what's the most rewarding part of your job right now?
The most rewarding is seeing the success of the students, and just like the Project Hope, that dropout alternative program, seeing those students who dropped out of high school, they have come back to school, they have gotten their academics, they have a career, many of them go on to college, and they're so successful. That is just, you can't ask for much more than, that's a huge reward. And we see that with because so many people, when they come here, they have, everyone has their own story, they have their own life's challenges, and helping them get through those, that's so that they can, at the end, have that career and be able to support a family. That's huge.
When you were notified that you were going to be inducted into the Oklahoma Women's Hall of Fame, what was going through your mind at that time?
Well, first I thought they called and were going to ask me for money or ask me to do something. And then when they told me it was that I was going to be inducted, I obviously did not know I had been nominated, so it was a huge surprise. My first thought is, why me? There's so many women who should be acknowledged, and they are so outstanding, and it made me feel, I guess that, that's a difficult thing to focus on yourself when there's so many that should be included.
Overall, what does this type of honor mean to you and to your family? Well,
at first I wasn't going to tell anyone, because I thought it was something that I would be bragging, or if I told people about it. But the people who had nominated me obviously knew about it, and so it was quite rewarding in that I just did not realize there was so much support, and I had people who supported me, who came to the induction, that I just had no idea would take time to honor me. So it was a huge honor. I think the biggest honor is just, to women in Oklahoma, and certainly there are so many that should be honored.
How do you feel now that, you have students, you have, I'm sure, instructors here, fellow administrators, and everybody in between now can look at you, Kay Martin, as a role model and leader in your profession? How does that make you feel?
Well, I know I can't do anything alone. None of us does that, and so I know that success only comes when people are working together and trying to achieve the same goals, and that's exactly what we're doing. I do know, because of my position, that many times I am singled out, and the people do look at you sometimes a little differently. And in that respect, I try to be a role model to others. I take the mentorship thing very seriously, and I also I try to walk my talk, because I think that's that's just critically important.
Okay. Can you tell me something about the people you would like to thank that helped played an important role in your life on a whole?
On a whole. There would be certainly a room full. I would start with my father, who's going to be 85 and living today, and again, one of my biggest supporters. My mother passed away 17 years ago, and she certainly is to be thanked. My son's been a great role model. He's always been, very encouraging and just very supportive. My ex-husband, who told me women don't do those things, also told me that I didn't always have to have a class in order to know how to do something. And I guess that being in education, sometimes I thought I had to take that class in order to know how to do it. But he was always very encouraging, very supportive after we kind of got through that one little hitch. And then my husband today has been a technology superintendent. He's retired today, but he certainly knows what the job's about, and he is so supportive. And I would think all the mentors I've had over the years, and that has been just a huge number. I one time tried to list all of them, and it was huge. My former boss and superintendent, Bruce Gray, who's passed away, was a huge mentor for me. And then a person that he worked with, who's now the superintendent at Tulsa, Gene Callahan, was a mentor. The staff that I work with on a daily basis are so encouraging and so supportive. And my assistant that was in here a while ago, Judy Harris, is just always there to help support whatever needs to be done. So that number's huge.
If you could give any piece of advice to fellow Oklahomans, what would you tell them?
Wow. I'd tell them to be proud of our state. Here we are in our centennial year, and we've had so many of these centennial moments to look at. And there have been so many people who have come before us who have done so many wonderful things. I've been involved in Leadership Oklahoma, Leadership Oklahoma City, and I think when you get involved in those activities and realize the power of our state and all the wonderful aspects of it, I think that we have so much to be proud of. And so, when you're sitting by somebody on an airplane and they don't even know where Oklahoma is, and they have the idea of that we're a little more backward, I guess, than perhaps they would think. I like to tell people how wonderful Oklahoma is, and I think we should be proud of it. And if it's something we don't like, then we need to try to help work on making it better.
What does Oklahoma mean to you?
Well, it's my birthplace, and it's where I plan to be buried. So it's a pretty important piece for me. I think it's a wonderful state. It's interesting with just this just being 100 years old. That we are a baby state, and when you travel other countries and they talk about how young the United States is, and then you talk about how Oklahoma is only 100 years old, that's kind of puts it in perspective. But I think the people, there could not be any better people. I think that just the generosity of our people, and I think we're like number 2 in the nation in giving and philanthropy. That tells a lot about the people and the passion. So it's just it's a state I want to continue to live in and talk to others about.
What would your advice be to other women who plan to follow in your footsteps?
Well, I'd tell them several things. Number 1, I'd tell them to get their credentials in order. To get their credentials. Many times I have phone calls from women who want to go into administration, and they'll say, when I get the job, then I'll go get this, this certificate or this degree or whatever. And that's not the way it works. You need to get all that together and be there so when the time does come, you'll have those credentials and be in the right place at the right time. And then I'd also tell them that I think one of the key ingredient in the success of women or people in administration is that relationship building and the positive attitude that the glass is always half full instead of half empty, and those are just really important aspects in order to go where they want to go.
How do you measure success?
I think overall it's probably success with what you've left behind, whether you've left that idea for that program that made the difference in the students' lives, whether you have touched somebody else in some respect as far as pulling them up when they needed to be pulled up, whether you have helped grow other people, whether you have mentored them. That is just, as women, we really, really need that. Not that men don't, but I think it's something that we need even more. Success in, feeling like you've done the best you can do, whether it be your family or your job or whatever it is. I think if you can look back and say, I did the very best that I could, then you've been successful.
When history is written about you, what would you like for it to say?
Well, I think I'd like for them to say that I was passionate about young people. I really cared about them. I cared about helping them have a better life. I was passionate about my family, and that I was a good friend, somebody who could be trusted, somebody who could be relied on, and that I had high ethics, and I guess overall feel like I was value added to this world.
What is next on the agenda for you? What do you think you'll be doing in the next few years?
Well, there will be retirement on the horizon and sometime in those next few years, and that's something I'm thinking about, because it's again, when I didn't really plan on, I guess, a career of, it's been 41 years last January, so it has been a long career, and it's not quite over, I hope. But I think that I want to continue to add value to, if I can help other people, if I can add value to our state, if I can just make a difference in people's lives, then I want to do that. So I'll need to find another aspect and another vantage point and a way to do that, and it's something I am thinking about and trying to figure out how do you get there and how do you do that.
Is there anything you would like to add that we have not touched upon today?
You touched on a lot more than I wanted to talk about. No, I'd rather talk about you. I'd rather ask about you. I can't think of anything anything else you want to ask. I don't think so. I appreciate this. I think it's a great opportunity for women, and it just seems like it's so, in the 41 years in my career, how things have changed, when I couldn't think of a role model who had done this, or even a woman who had a doctorate. Wow, what a change now. So I do try to, I think it's our responsibility to mentor others, and I guess a piece of advice I would have to young women who aspire to be administrators or CEOs, superintendents, whatever, ask someone to mentor you. Ask that person. I've had people ask me before, and it's a pretty powerful thing when they ask you. You feel that responsibility, and of course it has to be a two-way thing, that you feel that you want to mentor that person and they want to have you mentor them. But I think that's really a very powerful thing when that happens. So ask that person you admire to mentor you, and you might be surprised.
Over the years, have any of your mentees gone on to bright futures, bigger and better things?
They have.
And how does that make you feel at the end of the day?
It's huge. I mean, that's, again, that's, how do you want to be remembered? That's what it's all about, how you make other people feel, and how you might have contributed to their success, the little piece that you might have had in making their future brighter. So that's huge. So.
Well, we do thank you for your time today.
Thank you, and this is great. I think it's just, I appreciate you taking your time to do this, and I know it is time consuming, but it will be a piece of history that I want to look at everybody else's. So.
Well, we do thank you very much.
Thank you.